I'm just going to be playing, using my imagination to paint. I'll be using acrylic paints and high flow acrylics as well as acrylic inks using tilting, spritzing and plastic card techniques. For a full list of all the materials I'm going to be using in this tutorial, please see the description below. So, shall we get started? So I'm using some acrylic paper and I put some washi tape around the edge so I get a white border. This is Golden's High Flow Acrylics Ultramarine. You have to give it a good shake, and there's a little cartridge inside there that gets the paint all mixed up. And I've actually spritzed the surface of my paper, but it didn't really sort of activate the high flow acrylic here, so I've got to spritz it again. But I've sort of created just a horizon line to get me started. Now the whole point of this tutorial isn't to copy a photograph, it is really to work from your imagination and just play, see what happens. So here I'm just spritzing. Ultramarine is a beautiful sort of mid to dark blue, it's a warm colour, and you know, you're getting some exciting techniques just there. This is quinacridone gold, and it's again the high flow acrylics. I'm just spritzing that just to see what happens. It should make a kind of a greenish colour with the ultramarine, and this alone here could be seen as an abstract. You could stop here if you wanted to, but we're going to go on, of course. But I really like just playing with paints, and if you're bothered by all the mess, you can actually put some sheeting down or kitchen towel. But I'm actually spritzing here again, getting all the colours to blend in. That's the ultramarine and the quinacridone gold here, and you can create some quite atmospheric effects just here. So I'm not quite sure where I'm going. I certainly didn't have a cityscape in mind. I just wanted the paint to lead me in a direction. And I'm actually using some ink now. It's sort of a turquoise magic colour ink. You can get lots of different acrylic inks. So this is all acrylic based paint and inks here. And you can see the ultramarine is actually granulated as well, which is quite exciting. So I've got two blues and the yellow here, and I'm just going to give them a little spritz just to see what happens. I'm thinking seascape now. I'm thinking, oh, that looks like a seascape, maybe a landscape that's got a lot of blue, so I'm not quite sure. An abstract doesn't have to look like anything, it can just be colours and shapes and lights and darks and marks and things. But I kind of like to go semi-abstract. I like you to be able to see something there, but it's not quite there. This is burnt sienna, and I haven't used these high flow acrylics for a while, and it is very opaque. And maybe I didn't shake it for long enough. So I've certainly got a lot of paint there. It's a beautiful colour, but far too much. So I'm just, it's a bit of a shame really, but I'm spritzing off here. You don't have to use these tiny little bottles. You can actually use, you know, sort of a bottle that you've used that's had a household cleaner in. They're quite good. And this is my pipette here. It's just water. It's just clean water. Again, I'm just trying to get things to happen. And you can see I've got some lovely greens now using that turquoise acrylic ink with the quinacridone gold. I'm sprinkling some table salt just in the foreground to create texture. I do this a lot with watercolour because I've watered down these acrylics. They should behave very similar. I've given the painting time to dry naturally, and as you can see there, the salt has worked. I'm using a plastic palette knife here, and I've squeezed out some burgundy, a little bit of blue, some pink and white. And I'm using this straight out of the tube now. I'm not using the high flow acrylics here. So I'm using it like I'm buttering toast, and I'm just sort of scraping on. So this is a horizon line. So I'm just putting some burnt umber actually here on, creaming it on, and thinking to myself, these could be distant hills here. And I'm sort of creating a bit of texture with the palette knife. I'm not sure why I'm using this pink. I just quite fancied it. I'm not quite sure if it works here, but I'm just going to go with the flow, see what happens. So I'm just using some of the pink and some of the burnt umber mixed up, and I'm pulling down some marks with my plastic knife, wet on dry, and I've decided to go with a cityscape. So from a landscape with distant hills, I'm starting to sort of block in sort of rectangle buildings here with my plastic palette knife. So you can see, starting out with something very, very loose using the high flow acrylics, now I'm ended up with sort of water, a sky, and now some buildings. So I'm spritzing this sort of magenta colour, but it doesn't want to shift. It's actually dried quite well onto the paper here. But I'm trying my best just to get things so it looks a bit like water. It's just experimenting and playing though. I've no intention of even hanging this on the wall. This could be the best thing I've ever painted, but I'm just playing. There's no pressure. Obviously I'm showing you this on a YouTube video, but I wanted to show you that sometimes it's just as important just to play with the paints and just to see what happens. It's kind of art therapy. You can see here now the paint is quite wet. I've woken it up and I'm using my palette knife just to kind of blend and pull off and move around this paint. All the things you're not supposed to do, but it feels good to do. So I'm just manipulating this magenta. It's a good idea maybe to use the back of an old painting or something like that so it takes the pressure off. This is a little bit more of the high flow quinacridone gold. I wanted to break up that pink. It looked a bit flat looking. So I'm putting in this gold with the pink. It creates a nice orangey golden colour and kind of lifts that water area, makes it look more interesting. And these colours look beautiful actually. They're really starting to glow, and I'm just getting that sort of high flow quinacridone gold just to blend across the water to create a little bit of colour harmony. I'm also using the high flow here just to paint over the buildings and to glaze them a little bit, pinching a little bit of the burnt umber as well, using a little flat brush. Believe it or not, you can gain a lot of confidence just by playing like this, just painting from your imagination, because there's no pressure there. You kind of get something there and you just go with it really and see what happens. So I've allowed the painting to dry and I'm using a cut up plastic card and I'm printing on using white titanium paint, sort of windows and lights in windows and shapes and marks. It's quite dark with the building, so this adds a little bit of light. What I'm really pleased with is the blob of quinacridone gold high flow acrylics I use right at the beginning in the top left hand part of the painting looks like the sun. It's really atmospheric and it's quite beautiful really, and there's a reflection of it as well in the water right below it. So that's a happy accident. I didn't mean that, but I kind of went with the marks that I made on there to come to this. I have to say I love painting buildings in this way. In the water area, I'm making the same marks with the card, but sort of scraping them a bit so it looks like reflection and movement in water. I'm sort of doing the same on the left hand side here, just tapping gently, and sometimes the paint doesn't come off at all. Sometimes too much goes on. If that happens, just wet it with some clean water and just wipe off with a paper towel. What I'm doing here is I'm using the spritzer bottle just to spritz some of the reflective marks. I'm using my finger actually here, my little pinky finger, just to smooth and blend those white reflections to make them look soft, like they are reflections in water. I've decided again to use a brush now just to blend out some of those marks, so it really creates that illusion of water, and they're all soft and actually creating sort of almost lines and ripple lines as well. I'm going back with the plastic card here just to put some marks in this distant building as well, like the lights are on in the windows as the sun is going down. It would be quite nice to have a little spatter at this stage to create a little bit of light, more light in the water rather than creating more ripples. Just a little bit of sparkle, like all that is reflecting all of the lights of all of the buildings there. You just have to add a little bit of water to the paint to make it easier to spatter the paint. So I've actually put a little dollop of quinacridone gold there. I'm using a little flat brush. I'm just painting sort of a very sort of transparent glaze actually over these sort of more distant buildings, just to sort of make them look a little bit more solid. I decided this furthest little building here right below the sun was that it stood out too much on its own. So I'm putting some smaller little buildings around it using my little flat brush here just to create a little bit more information, putting a few little more dark marks on there as well with the burnt umber. And I thought I'd put a few more white lights on there as well with my plastic card. I'm using a little round brush now to put some little bit of cadmium yellow instead of just white lights, and a few little yellow lights here and there as well, just to balance everything out. And I think it is quite magical actually, with all these little lights on, brings the painting to life. You notice as I'm getting towards the end of this painting, the marks get smaller and the colours get lighter as well. So I'm using some bigger blobs here as well, here and there. And I've decided to add a little bit of the yellow to the red for more of an orangey light. And I've made some bigger marks there, just being a bit braver there to create a little bit of interest as well, and to make the painting look colourful. Well, it looks very colourful as well. And what I'm doing now as well is just sort of trying to paint the same sort of yellow lights in the water as well, to reflect the ones that are in the buildings. So here is the finished painting. I really hope you enjoyed my creative process, starting off with a squiggly blue line on damp paper and then ending up with a sunset over sort of a cityscape skyline. I really hope this inspired you to maybe have a go just working from your imaginations and just playing with your acrylics. If you don't have the inks or the high flow, you can just water down your acrylics if you want to work in that sort of style. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my acrylic painting channel so you'll get updates of my latest tutorials. Thank you so much for watching again. Happy painting. Bye for now.